Good afternoon, or do I say good evening? I can see the attendance has already thinned down, so we will not bore you with lot of technical jargons, rather we'll keep it into light conversation. But at any point in time, if you would like to ask the question, please do so. So I probably will start, USR, if that is okay. I'll quickly start. So my name is Subhas Mondal. In my role, I am leading the 5G initiative from technical standpoint, collaborating with academia for the research activities. We are getting involved into standard and also looking into how do we really get into, I think from TCS talked about transformation of our journey from pure services, engineering services to IP-based services. How do we really transform ourselves to make sure that we generate more value for the country and also for the company, right? So that is the journey we are at. And I have been looking at multiple aspects of it, right from the product development perspective, from the services perspective, and also transforming the verticals with the 5G use cases and initiatives.
Yeah, this is Sanyasi Rao. Been with Tech Mahindra for the last 20 years. I'm the CTO, and like he said, right, we don't want to make it very technical, so I want to appear as the most technical for non-technical guys, right? So, see, my charter is to, again, as you said, right, we are reinventing ourselves, and then how do we, see, 5G changes a lot of things, right? So the challenges are different, and couple 5G with virtualization, open source, you mash everything, and then you don't know whether you are a service company or a product company. Operators do not know whether they're offering a service or offering products. It's all, the lines are getting thin, right? So what we are trying to do is to see how do we adopt. See, we have got two roles, right? Tech Mahindra works in two roles. One is we work with operators, equipment makers, and we also work with enterprises, right? So we have a challenge to tell to operators that there is something that we can offer because you will be successful. And then we also have to tell enterprises in that what operators are doing is very relevant for you, so you have to go on and invest in something that makes operators to survive, right? So that's where we are. And to add to whatever discussions we are hearing about IoT, and then you drop all of a sudden 5G, and then you say that, hey, no, is that IoT investments in network make sense? Or do I need to wait for 5G? There's additional confusion that will come. So that's where we are. So we are, in my role, I consult the operators, I consult the equipment makers, and help them decide on a roadmap. That's what it is. Right?
Thanks, yes, sir. Yeah, so you talked about multiple hats that you wear. Would you like to talk about what is the current state of 5G? There is, I know, a lot of hype in the market. The service providers are trying to figure out what do they do with this new technology and how do they really make more money. So while there are a lot of exciting jargons, new radio is coming, millimeter wave is active, what is going to be the impact of it, ultra high bandwidth, ultra low latency, massive connection density, what do I do with it? What do I have to invest and what is the return on? So what are you seeing globally as well as in India?
Right. I think, so, see, when the entire 5G buzzword started, right? So the question everybody said that who will pay for it? Do we need it? What is the killer application? 4G itself will give you 3 Gbps per base station. Device will get 1 Gbps. Which application? There's no business case. And then all of a sudden they said, no, 5G is going to change the industry, IoT, low latency will change the shop floor. All this, there's a lot of hard work is done by the equipment maker to say, hey, there is a business case for 5G, right? And then what you see on the ground today, interestingly, is that without having the killer application, without having the industries signing off on the use case, we discussed, right? IoT, the basic IoT itself, we are having challenges. But the lectures are going live. The top 4 operators in US went live, South Korea, both operators, Japan, 4 operators, China, all 3 operators, everybody is going live. At the end of the day, again, how are they trying to monetize? They said, we are going to charge them $15 per month is what US says. China says we are going to charge $18 per month for 5G connection, right? And interestingly, with all that uncertainty about do we need 5G, it will be surprising that some of these operators went live without having a device. There's no 4G phone, but the network went live. That is urgency. Again, it's because there some factors helped with all the trade war that is happening. You have to be seen as a superpower trying to dictate. Maybe it helped, right? That's one way of looking at saying that networks going live without having the devices. The second thing that I think the 5G is helping is, one operator takes lead, like for example, see if Telstra says that I went live in X number of cities and I'm going to charge you at X dollars per month, service is available. The challenger comes in, says that now I am launching 6 months behind, but it is free. It's at a 4G cost. Now I think, right? So this is going to happen, right? So now, in fact, to relate it to what I have seen, when I went and talked to an Indian operator, they said, we don't need 5G at all. 4G speeds themselves are more than enough. The same guy, last week they went in public, they said, spectrum is expensive, otherwise we'll go. So maybe 3 months down the line, they actually will go for, and the reason for that is very simple, right? In the case where there were choices to make between CDMA and GSM, you had a doubt. But now there is anything and everything is 5G. And in fact, the way it is 5G is structured, as you know, it is future-proof. Because now going forward, anything you do will be tucked under 5G. So you can't escape, right? It has to be 5G. Now it's a question of whether you do it today or you do it tomorrow. It's a choice that, so 5G will be successful. We are seeing live deployments. And now, as you might have noticed, the device ecosystem is coming. Now Samsung S10 has come, OnePlus has launched some devices, right? But with the massive investments that are going into the network, devices are actually not able to catch up. This is what are the technology challenges that go in. So there is no doubt that 5G will come in, but then industry use cases, low latency, and in fact, I just want to make sure that 5G still, whatever is evolved today, is only broadband. It's only speed and speed and speed. All the niceties of 5G, which are going to make difference, is still not defined. Latency portion is not defined, but then it's still going live, right? So yeah, that's where operators are invested. Now they'll have to figure out how to monetize.
Many of them are going to the live streaming part.
Yeah, that's again, it's all consumer use cases is what will happen, right? But then the real killer application which 5G started, hype was created, the spec has to come, implementation will tighten.
Autonomous driving was the major lead for 5G.
Correct.
And that itself is lagging by at least a couple of years.
Exactly. Again, why? Again, there is a battle to be won between C-V2X versus DSRC. First, they have to settle between North America going with one and Europe going with another. So it is, yeah. So that's what I see. But see, it's given. Smartphones will be the way for 5G. But then I still do not know. I think you may have to tell about when is this ultra reliable, low latency kind of use cases will actually start delivering to the operator's kitty. Now it's a spend. For an operator, it's a spend. So you have any opinion on when is these use cases will see light?
Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'll share my perspective of what I am hearing from some of my customers. Since you talked about the telco side, I probably will talk about industry vertical. So, but before that, I thought I'll take a 2-minute tutorial. If some of you are not very familiar with what 5G is all about, I know there is a lot of buzz, 5G, but what is it really? So if I look at it, there are two fundamental characteristics related to the 5G. Number one is evolution of the network from 4G characteristic to 5G characteristic. And most of those evolution is in terms of 10x improvement compared to the 4G technology from radio access perspective. But that is only a small part of the whole thing. Of course, that is the most exciting, technically most complex. What it means is, when I talk about broadband connection, which we discussed that is the one that has taken up perhaps so far, the EMBB, Enhanced Mobile Broadband, that is giving you a speed up to 20 Gbps downlink and 10 Gbps uplink from a single cell. And an user experience data rate guarantee of 100 Mbps, though the devices can go above Gbps speed, but minimum it is guaranteed. So that is a new parameter. So far, there was no concept of user experience data rate guarantee. 5G is talking about guaranteeing that. The second parameter that has shifted is the ultra reliable and low latency connection, where we are talking about end-to-end connection latency of 1 millisecond. Now that's a significant change, but when it comes to end-to-end application latency that you are talking about, perhaps it will be a combination of three things. That is where the concept of network slicing, allocation of the quality of service comes in. And the third thing that we are talking about, the massive device connectivity. I think Swapna in the previous panel talked about factory automation perhaps is going to be one of the major uptake because there is a huge number of machines that are talking to each other, right? So fundamentally, the technology so far till 4G has been about enabling connection to humans primarily and to some extent human to machine, but it is bringing in two additional segments, right? Very distinctly. One is the human to human that was given, human to machines, and then machine to machine, right? So IoT, like in the previous sessions has been discussed, has been around for many, many years. But when it comes to the IoT, what is IoT, right? I would give this analogy. If you look into a human body, I would call that is the biggest example of an IoT. And there are two distinct parts. One is the autonomy of the network, right? We all are autonomous system. And then the autonomy enabled by the sensors. The sensors are connected by the nerves, which is nothing but your networking requirement. So I would look at 5G perhaps from that sense, how is it evolving? So I'll not get too much into analogy, but the second part I would like to talk about is about the revolution part. So 5G is not only an evolution, but it is a revolution. And the revolution part is nothing but USR talked about virtualization, talked about the programmability, right? So that is the revolution. Why is it so significant? So think about it. If I had to host an application using a dump pipe, I have no possibility of negotiating with the network infrastructure to say, for hosting my application, how do I dynamically demand what I need at that point in time? That capability didn't exist. Of course, there has been the concept of APIs, but was this mandated? The answer is no, right? So what is happening now in the 5G, network is becoming programmable. It is autonomic, exactly the way if let's say you have a wound, you can heal it. The healing process is built in. So you can do a self-healing mechanism with the SWAN features because of the programmable network. And also, you actually can demand from the application perspective what you need. So to that extent, it is becoming more autonomic. It is becoming also loosely coupled. So if the applications would like to demand what it needs from the infrastructure, it will be able to demand. So getting into that concept, now my enterprise customers are looking into how do they reinvent themselves to monetize this capability. And that is where trials, experiments are starting. And to your point, you talked about EMBB scenarios. Probably AR/VR is one of the first use cases that have started taking off. But when it comes to URLLC, we are not there. 3GPP standard, I can talk about it endlessly, but I will not get there. There is an enormous amount of challenge, right? That is technically unsolved, right? So just to talk about one simple thing, we are talking about ultra wideband communication. As the bandwidth increases, theoretically your power consumption increases. 5G standard in IMT 2020 is talking about 100 times power reduction compared to the previous generation. Academicians still do not know how to achieve that objective, right? So it is all exactly in paper. And then if you really want to get into 20 Gbps on your phone, it will become a furnace. The question is, how are you going to manage that power, right? So those questions are not answered yet, right? So there are a lot of uncertainties, but there is a lot of excitement. People are doing early POC, and that is where it is. So since it is an IoT track, I thought I will ask you, from your experience with the service provider, how are you seeing the adoption of IoT? It all started with the narrowband IoT. Okay, of course, that before that you had the GSM-based IoT services. Now it went into narrowband IoT, and now 5G is getting into defining the new standard, which is not yet done. It will probably be out by mid next year. How are you seeing the operators adopting to this IoT journey?
Yeah, I think, see, compared to what we talked about 5G, IoT networks are more mature. And if you statistically, if you look at, there are about 125 networks are live. Most of them are, again, Cat and B compared to LTE-M, which is a good sign, right? And importantly, if you were to look at these networks are relatively new. The 4G networks are 2008, 2009 timeframe. But these networks are 15, 16, right? So I think in the previous panel they said telecom network cycle is 7 years. We still have some juice left in it, right? And I also want to tell you that the way we said about 5G, right? Network is there, but device is not there. You know what comes to IoT? The analogy is completely different. We have the networks ready, spec is not there. You know why? Because the networks are so new, now 3GPP is trying to accommodate the existing narrowband IoT networks to be accommodated in 5G. So whatever IoT networks you see today are actually 5G networks. That's because the spec will be made, 5G spec will be made compatible. And again, part of it is because, as I said, right, 5G is going to be a future-proof technology. That is because they made everything programmable. Bandwidth is programmable, carrier is programmable, everything encoding, everything is programmable. So you just have to go on and define, say, I'm going to support this spacing with this, and then you are ready for a narrowband IoT, right? So for a change, IoT is not going to impact, the 5G is not going to impact IoT networks because IoT networks today are actually 5G networks. It's just a matter of 1 year for it to be formally ratified, saying that, hey, you know what, we have accommodated the entire requirements into 5G standard. That's how we are going to start. After that, now people will talk about, having said that, whatever I talked about today is all about changing the radio, the physical, to be accommodated. But then the first change would happen is that, do we really need to have a separate core network for IoT? They come with their own core network for supporting non-IP and all that, right? So I think that's what they are trying to see. Let's go and then mash the core network changes by having the radio interface same. And then later they'll increase the capacities that people are talking about, right? 10x devices more will come later. So the networks are ready today, IoT. The use cases we have to be figured out. But having said that, I just want to give you my perspective with respect to operators, right? So the couple of things very interesting. So we go and then talk about, there is a construction company. You talked about IoT. We said that you're a field work. You can't go with Wi-Fi and all this low range, and let's go for cellular network. We are a system integrator. We partnered with AT&T and all that. We went there. And that guy says, good that you're covering in cities, but my construction happens outside. I said, then the operator says, no, there is no business case. Okay, just leave it. Then we went with another healthcare devices company. And we said, they were really forward-looking like Philips, right? Therefore, we understood the business case, and we wanted to go cellular. All the stations everywhere that AED devices are there, we want to be enabled. Then we go with an operator. Then they say that these AED devices can be installed anywhere. It's not in open space. Then they said, do you have the coverage? Then operator said, no, like that if you ask, no, it's very difficult. In the open space, I can put one base station. But if you say that, hey, for your requirement of 3 devices in a stadium, you put me a base station. So networks are there, but very in urban areas, but not really to go and then create a narrowband IoT kind of use case today. Again, chicken and egg story. This will happen, right? That technology is launched, but in limited areas.
See, that's the point, right? Technology for the sake of technology is a problem statement as of today.
Exactly. Yes, this is where it is. The technology is available, it works, use case is figured out, but when we go and hit the ground, then we say, what, if you ask those areas, I can't do it, right? It is none other than AT&T. They have a challenge with global MVNOs and all that working, but they said, we can't do this piecemeal. So networks are there, but then pockets. Even in India, in fact, if you were to look at what Vodafone went big with narrowband IoT, there are IoT use cases they want to do. But the question is the coverage is going to be the problem on where do you generate the capacities which are required. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so Yeah, yeah, we should.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe I'll just, he led to a very interesting point, so I'll take about another 1 minute if that is okay. Yeah, so it's a very interesting point that the pocket coverage versus blanket coverage, how do you achieve with 5G, right? So that is where the question of, I think Swapna talked about the factory communication. If I have a factory and I need to have an ultra reliable low latency connection, do I need a service provider network or can I build my own network, right? So if I have to be completely autonomic in my own communication system for internal purpose, how do we go about it? That is a standard that is getting developed now. This is called this is non-service provider network as it is called, and there is a lot of standardization work taking place. So we can discuss offline since we are out of time.